Hey, it is Sunday night, April 24th, and maybe this is my go to time to go live for a little while around 9 o'clock Pacific on a Sunday evening. I just wanted to take a moment to update people as to why it's only been like one article a week for several weeks. Not just busyness, but certainly alluded to there are problems with the structure of the site. And so I'm going to call this, we're moving towards Fanboy Planet 4.0. And I am assured that by paying for these further services and this transition to being somewhat better, that there will be fewer issues and that it may even actually be a much better running site. Along with that, though, we have discovered there are some problems with older articles that are connected to a plugin that doesn't communicate well with Amazon Web Services. So I think it's like a lot of items posted before 2019 exist and don't exist at Schrodinger's website. So I'm really trying to solve all those things while working during the day and then kind of coming back to Fanboy Planet at night. So there are a few projects coming up as far as just content wise that I hope will be interesting and fascinating. And I think I'm going to be focusing on video for a while because it's at least possible to post on Facebook and YouTube if I can't update on to fanboyplanet.com for a little bit. That also kind of applies to the podcast. A lot of old episodes of the podcast are now unreachable, at least from the site, but still playable on Apple Podcasts, except that Apple Podcasts seems to not be updating the past few episodes that we have had for the Fanboy Planet podcast. So thinking there must be a new and better way to do that as well. Maybe a retrenching, a rethinking. And honestly, the time that Rick and I usually set aside to record, I have not actually had the time for the past month or so. May is probably not going to get much easier. So I will say that June uh, should be a bigger, brighter time for Fanboy Planet, which is good because the 4th of July weekend is BayCon. And now I've said it out loud, it reminds me to buy my membership, but I have been an invited guest uh, in San Mateo, California. So I'll be doing something there. I'll be bringing books to sign, or to sell rather. I will have signed them, and hopefully, I've also been told by Jason Williams that he would be happy to pre-sign them for me, so that you can get signed copies of I Was Flesh Gordon at pretty much every convention appearance that I make from now on, moving forward. So I figured that was something that was long overdue as well. And then, of course, we got Comic Con. So I did just go to WonderCon with Craig Price from Matinee Heroes, and there's some coverage coming on that actually that will be from Matinee Heroes side, but it's guesting me. We just recorded a podcast yesterday, and Craig will be hosting that. So keep an ear out for the Matinee Heroes podcast. I don't know if I'm allowed to say which movie we focused on, but we did spend a good amount of time talking about WonderCon and the experience of that as a convention coming back after a couple of years off. And in fact, I think WonderCon had been the last convention that I attended publicly before the pandemic. It might have been Gallifrey 1, and then we found out that it was all going to be there. So I see someone has joined in. So if anybody wants to comment, I think I can get to comments. There we go. And certainly say hi. But anyway, so that will be June and July, and I've got a couple of interview series coming up. I've started having a series of conversations with comics creator, historian, and I think social activist, social justice activist for creators' rights, Clifford Meth. So we recorded the first of those. I've got a multi-part. It wasn't intended to be multi-part, but our conversation lasted a good amount of time with Stephen Prince, who is the creator of Monster Matador. And so we are editing, I am editing that into a series of videos talking about the creative process and the Kickstarter process, which we had kind of started talking about the creative process with the Kickstarter process with Russell Novelty, and I've run into Russell a couple of times the last month, so I think that may continue as well. Because at this point, I find that particularly fascinating, and I hope you do too as well. And I don't know. I got to figure out another way to deliver some new, things that are going on, and commentary. Moon Knight is fascinating. I adored last week's episode, even though it was definitely messing with people's minds. But it owes an awful lot to Jeff Lemire's run on Moon Knight from a few years ago. So I know we've recommended that on the podcast before, and it's not an exact adaptation, but you should, if you really want to kind of get a little more insight into that. I believe that's come out in trade paperback or maybe even an omnibus in the last couple of weeks. So there's a good one. And I don't know, what else was I going to think? Oh, you can't see behind me, but I have a whiteboard with all these projects, and I realized it's starting to look like a Jeff Johns DC crossover, as I had read Flashpoint Beyond a couple of weeks ago. And that's what I feel is like there. 5G is not canceled, but I'm not upgrading to 5G. It means something completely different in the DC universe. And yeah, that's where we are. I see some more people have joined in. Since I'm on, any questions for the week, or conversations that people want to begin? I've been rearranging things and reading things. I just it was Comic Fest in San Diego, which I did not attend, but I did have dinner with anthology editor Christopher Sequeira Thursday night before he drove down to San Diego. And he's got a new anthology about superhero horror stories that just came out. It's prose, although there is a comic story in it, and it is called Caped Fear, and we believe it just went on sale in the U.S. This past week. And what's really interesting in it is that there is one actual comic story, and it is by George R.R. Martin, and it is one of his earliest pieces of fiction, and it is drawn by a young Jim Starlin. And it's a story from a character called Dr. Weird. And they gave permission, although I guess apparently they didn't have the rights to it themselves anymore, but Chris tracked it down and got this into this anthology. So this is worth picking up if you're a fan of Jim Starlin, and if you're a fan of George R. R. Martin, to really see those two getting their start in the comics industry. We were trying to figure out which publisher it was originally. And I know I've seen Dr. Weird, and I think it was revived by Big Bang Comics, but this is actually from like 1970 or 1971. So really, really interesting anthology. And there's the first prose story by Colleen Duran. She's done obviously comics, and she's been brilliant at that as a writer and an artist. And she's contributed a prose story to this anthology, and it's kind of a riff on, quite obviously, the Legion of Superheroes, but it is a terrifying story that you couldn't tell in any Legion of Superheroes continuity, but it is a true horror story and living up to the meaning of the anthology. So I'm working my way through that as well. And catching up on, I keep looking off to the left because I got a stack around, and there's just so much I'm behind on and catching up. But so anyway, that's it. If you're just coming in, and people are coming in and out, that we're working on getting the site up and back and running in full order, and hopefully again, better video, better audio, better source for the podcast, and like I said, also kind of, as I often think I have to from time to time, rethink how we're reformatting the podcast. I think it's going to be simpler for us to not continue with the live streaming of it. And when I say simpler, it's just we hadn't found the really good solution to make everybody sync up. We've certainly enjoyed having conversations, but I think audio only for the main podcast is the way to go. So anyway, that is it for now. Thank you for those who are continuing on and still checking in. I hope by the end of this week I will be able to do some updates, but I was advised actually Thursday night, don't update the site until we've got everything done. So I'm not quite sure how many days that's going to take, but I'm hoping by next weekend I'll be able to put some more stuff up. But in the meantime, you can pay attention to YouTube, because I think in the middle of the week I may at least get one or two of the videos that I've been talking about edited and up. And keep trying. But these are tough times, and they don't seem to be getting much easier right now. But they will. It will get better. And yeah, this is not a self-pitying thing. It's more to say, hey, I'm still around, and we are trying to do things. And it's just technology is our friend and our enemy at the same time, because I admit I am not the most technologically savvy person, and I'm having to catch up on a lot of things that I have not figured out how to do before and now have to do. So again, thank you all, and use your powers for good. See, still trying to work out how to end the broadcast smoothly.